What's up guys? Today got another install video for you. This is going to be putting in the OEM MAF sensor, or essentially the Denso MAF sensor. Denso makes all the OEM parts, so you can go ahead and order this one off Amazon for $120. Again, it's a little on the expensive side, but for this part you need the exact one that's working. Just like we did the front O2 sensor, that needs to be the Denso part, and this one also needs to be the correct one too. Because especially on your turbo car here, which is this is a 2004 WRX, the MAF scaling, whether or not you have an intake, an aftermarket one, or the stock airbox, the MAF scaling needs to be right exactly what it was from the factory. You need to use the exact part. You can't go on eBay and get those $30 MAF sensors. That's a recipe for blowing this up. So use the right part, don't blow it up. For this one, the part number is 1976040, as you can see. And again, this is for a 2004, but I believe these are the same all the way from 2002 to 2007. The 08s probably have a different number, but you might just want to check. This could fit other ones, who knows. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so now for tools and parts you're going to need. Obviously, your mass airflow sensor, and everybody, including if you have an aftermarket intake or the stock airbox or anything else, you're going to need obviously just a screwdriver. I believe this is like a #1 screwdriver. It's kind of small. So, is it a #1? I don't even know. Yes, #1 screwdriver. And then for me, I have the Cobb SF intake. So I'm gonna have to actually take the cover off of that. So I just have a small Allen key or wrench to get that off. But if you have a stock airbox, you'll be able to see the 2 screws you need to take out to remove the mass airflow sensor, the original one. You're going to use your screwdriver for that, and it's right on top, so don't worry about that stuff. Alright, so as you can see here, I have the Cobb airbox and an upgraded, basically complete intake here. We have the Perrin turbo inlet. We have the Torque Solutions Aftermath tube, and then under here we actually have the comb filter, the MAF sensor, and this nice little box that keeps all the heat away from it. So what I'm going to go ahead right now and do is take my Allen key or wrench here. I'm going to go ahead and remove all these bolts here so we can actually get the internals out and take a look at everything. And also, again, if you don't have an aftermarket intake with a box specifically, your MAF sensor is going to be right there chilling. Again, if you have this, if you have the whole box, if you do not have the box, let me get that correct, if you do not have the box, it's going to be right there. You'll be able to see it, and I'll show you guys once we get in there. If you have the stock airbox, again, you're going to have the stock airbox, you're going to have your MAF sensor on the outside, and then you're going to have the rest of your intake. So if you just have the Cobb one, you're going to have to take that off. All right, so as you can see, we have the airbox open right now, and my filter here, it's actually, because this Torque Solutions pipe is a little longer than the stock one apparently, it pushes it into the sidewall here, and this is actually the other portion that was down here before I removed this and cleaned it for one day. But it's okay if these get a little smashed. I mean, it doesn't look the greatest, but it's underneath here. It's not going to do any harm. It's not going to throw off any air to fuel ratios, but I'm actually going to see if I can bend that back without harming anything. But I did forget, you are going to need a one other type of screwdriver. You're going to need a flat screwdriver just to get this hose clamp off. And you might have another hose clamp down here. I know I do. So right in there, let me get a light on that for you. But right in there, you'll see another hose clamp, and then you'll see the MAF airflow sensor. It says Denso on top of it, made in Japan. It's probably the original one. Will be right there. And just to point out, I can do this with my hand, but you'll see right here, there's one of the screws, and then behind this cover here is another one of the screws. And that's why we're basically going to take this whole thing apart, just because I have the Cobb intake. Again, if you have the stock intake, you'll be able to open your engine bay up, look right on top, and you'll see that sensor right on top of there, and you'll be able to access it in 2 seconds, replace it, and get on your way. So I'm going to go ahead and take this basically all apart for you, and I'll tune back in whenever I have all that apart. Alright, so not a big deal, but what I actually did do was, you can actually see there's like bugs and stuff in here, so I'm going to clean all that out. I'm not going to do it on camera because I'm sure you don't want to watch me clean it out. But where that was actually crushed in at, I just simply moved it back. These things are actually pretty rugged and pliable, but this, you can actually, I don't know if you guys can see, but I can definitely see this needs to be cleaned out. So I'm gonna take an air compressor to this and clean it out like officially, best that I can, and that should help. And actually there is a little bit of damage there, so I might want to think about getting a new one of these at some point, but that still would not be messing up with my air to fuel ratio, but either way, you want clean air going in there. So that's another problem for another day, and another solution for another day. So we're gonna put that aside right now. And we're basically just gonna look at the cob intake system here. And initially when I took this out, I was like, oh God, like, if you can hear this, I'll put it up here to the mic, but you can hear that rattling. I was like, oh God, there's something wrong with it. Well, I figured out what that was. It's actually down here, this little washer, as you can see, not rattling now. So not a big deal. This is actually just for the mounting bracket. I don't use that because mine stays in place. I actually can't even use that at this point. But you can definitely see in here that it is actually really dirty. So I'm gonna go ahead and disassemble this for you on camera. There's gonna be 2 bolts here, one here and one here. You're actually gonna be, not really bolts, but screws, 2 screws, one in here and here, you're gonna be using. You do have to watch on these can break. Mine have never broken because I've taken this out and I've cleaned it, but I've heard reports online that they do break, especially if you live in a salty climate. So here in Pittsburgh, they get pretty nasty, but these ones seem to be okay. If not, go down to your hardware store, match them up, get some new ones. It's not a big deal. But this is the actual sensor, and the whole sensor is actually in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these out right now. And I'm gonna position the camera a little bit lower for you guys so you can see exactly what I'm doing. But I'm just gonna take these out. Again, #1 screwdriver. They should come out pretty easy. Don't force them. If they're not coming out, they might be seized up and you might strip something out. But there you go, there's one. And here's #2. The problem you get with these is a lot of people are going to be replacing this at 100,000 miles, and if it's never been removed and never cleaned, which is a bad thing, that's when they're going to be seized up. So you'll be able to tell then. I've been cleaning mine approximately every 10 to 15K since I've had it. So I'm just going to go ahead and lift up on this, and you should be mindful that it is going to be dirty in here, but here's the whole sensor, and here is the O-ring here. Make sure you don't booger that up if you're trying to put the same one back in, if you're trying to clean it or something. But the O-ring's right there. You can see this is actually not the sensor. This is the air temperature sensor. You can see it's all black and nasty. I mean, look at this. This is my finger. Look. I'll do it on my pinky. My pinky is clean. That's dirt. So that's what's getting on these sensors and getting them screwed up. The actual sensor for your mass airflow is down in there. So if you're ever cleaning this, if you're taking this out to clean it, not replace it, you know, you can always try that first. Get some mass airflow sensor cleaner and get it down in there. This one's beat, so we're gonna get rid of this and we're gonna put the new one in. Okay, so I have my intake pipe. We have the new sensor here. I'm gonna get it out of the box. These are really delicate, so don't go knocking them around or anything. I'm actually gonna be really delicate with this, and I'm actually gonna get a pair of scissors over here. And you can add that to your tools list if you're opening a bag, but just go ahead and cut this sucker open and pull the new one on out, and make sure you do not get this dirty. So here's the new sensor. As you can see, you know, it looks basically the same, but just side-by-side comparison here, you can see this one's a little amber on that intake temperature thing, and mine is black. So yeah, we're gonna put the new one in. And also what I'm gonna do now is, I'm gonna put those away here for a second, and I'm gonna get a clean paper towel. And I'm just gonna take this, I'm not gonna spray anything in it because I don't wanna get any dirt in there, but I'm just gonna get any loose dirt that's laying around here, you know, in any of these crevices. I'm just gonna clean them out. There's gonna be some on there. Just make sure it's clean, essentially. Even up around here, up around where you get it, just get that all off there. You're only in here every now and again, so. There you go, as you can see, there's just a little bit there. That's all you should really have to do. Don't go spraying chemicals in here because, you know, that could interfere with your readings on your mass airflow sensor. So now that we have that all done, I'm gonna take the new sensor here very delicately, and I'm gonna take this and I'm just gonna position it back in where I had it before. And I'm just gonna give it a slight press down to get it in, because that O-ring can shrink and air can actually be let in there, and that's getting past the sensor. The sensor's not gonna be picking that up. And that could be actually what's wrong with mine. So what I'm gonna do is put these screws back in. I'm gonna thread right in the original screws. Make sure you do them by hand first, obviously, as good as you can. You can go ahead and tighten these down. Make sure they catch so you're not stripping anything. And they're all gonna go in there. And once you hit bottom on here, on the one, just make sure you go ahead and do the other one before you tighten the sucker down too heavy. And then you can give it just a, you know, you don't have to crank down on this, but you do want it to be airtight. So make sure they are tight, don't strip them out. So now we have the new one in there, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna install this on the car. Okay, so now I have basically everything back together. Got my intake pipe, I got my filter over there, and all the hose clamps are basically where they need to be. So what I'm gonna go do is just reinsert this very carefully back into the whole system here and shove it down on into the pipe. Basically as far as I can personally get it to go on this one, because I need as much room as possible. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and plug in right now. And obviously it's pretty simple, but if you didn't unplug that to get it out, you wouldn't get it out, so take your plug off. So that's just about in. I'm gonna go ahead and take my flat screwdriver here and line up my hose clamp. And if you need to, you can always take this front air box off here, the air intake duct, to get some more clearance in there, but I actually didn't even think about doing that, surprisingly. So I'm gonna go ahead and start tightening this down. And obviously once you get it snugged up, just reposition it, make sure it's where it needs to be to properly seal that. I'm gonna go ahead and unplug this again, just because I need to get my hand around it. You could actually put it off to the side. So like I said, to plug that in first, don't plug it in first. Skip that step, go back, and make sure you actually do get this hose clamp completely on here. There we go, now it's on there. Yeah, there we go, that's a lot better. So make sure that's completely on there, and then you can tighten it down the rest of the way, depending on how loose that was when you took it out. Okay, so there we go. That's nice and tight. We shouldn't have any air leaks there, which is a good thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and now I'm gonna plug this in for good, hopefully, and make sure you have a secure connection there. You actually can put this somewhere else. You won't need that for a little bit. And next here is your cone filter. And again, these are all the extra steps of even aftermarket intake. This is all the extra stuff you have to do. If not, this is right on top and you'd be done in 5 seconds. So, right now, I'm just gonna go take my air filter here and try to position it on here as good as I can on the intake pipe. And it is a tight fit. So, there we go. Go ahead, shove it on there, and just make sure it's all in there good. Mine is, and try not to damage the filter, obviously. And go ahead and tighten this hose clamp down. And again, you can position these however you want. I position them so whenever I'm trying to get it on or off the next time, it's right where I need it to be. You wouldn't want this in an odd location where you couldn't tighten down on it. And again, just run your fingers around it. Make sure it's completely where it needs to be sitting. The cob intake here on the filter actually has a nice little lining that will allow your hose clamp to sit right where it needs to be and not even be slightly off. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this down. And it seems to be down pretty good. I'm just gonna run my hands along it. And everything seems to be pretty secure right now. So I'm just gonna double check. And I know I'm really anal about this, but just make sure all your hose clamps are really tight. Not overly tight, but give them a little snug down. Those are good, that's in. And essentially, you're all done here. I would not put the airbox back on yet. I'm actually gonna start mine. We're gonna go ahead inside the car now, and I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do there with the access port, and just basically start it up and let it idle for a little bit. All right guys, so I just got in the car and you can hear it's beeping because I put the key in the ignition. I'm gonna go ahead and plug in my access port. I have the version 2 access port, and this one does not have an on-off feature, so you have to plug and unplug it. I rarely use it, so it is what it is. And I'm just gonna let that kind of turn on. And then, I'm gonna give that a second. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put the car in the on position. And you guys have seen me do this before, but we can actually go in and look at our live data, and you can look at any of these, but again, the AF learning is off the charts pretty much right now. 12.5, ridiculous. So we're gonna go down, and hopefully this is the fix for it. We're gonna go to the troubleshooting. We're gonna reset the ECU. And it's gonna say a check mark, ECU is reset. And then we're gonna exit out of there. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna turn the car in the off position again. And actually, we're even gonna remove the key just to be safe. That's what they tell you to do. Eventually this is gonna say like cannot connect to the ECU, and you'll know it's good. So right now we're just resetting the ECU. And then we're gonna just start the car for the first time and hope that it runs, obviously. And we're just gonna monitor where those go, and we're gonna let it idle for about 10 minutes to relearn everything. And you definitely do not wanna skip this step, because you know, that MAF scaling and what's on that sensor, that's gonna really affect what the engine's gonna be reading. So don't skip this step. Don't be like, oh, I don't need to do this or whatever. You most certainly do have to redo this. So we're gonna go ahead and reinsert the key. Turn to the on position again. And we're gonna go to the live data. We're gonna see if that data has been cleared out. And as you can see, we're reading 0 for the AF learnings. That's a good indication that we're back down to 0 again, just where the ECU rests to begin with. So you can go ahead and you can actually leave this AF learning on here, because that's what we actually want to look at. We'll look at some other parameters as we're starting. If you don't have an access port and you're just doing this with the stock airbox and stock ECU, that's completely fine. Just go ahead and unplug your battery, pump your brakes a few times. That's going to get the rest of the electricity out of the system, so there's nothing in there, and that will essentially reset your computer. So we're going to go ahead and start the car and see what happens. And it started beautifully. Cold start. And you can see the RPMs searching for a little bit of something right now. That's pretty normal. We're gonna go ahead and just watch the AF learning here. It's not gonna be changing right now. I've done this 1,000 times. This is gonna be when you're driving it. It's gonna be changing. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna look through some of the other parameters we got. AF correction 1. We got some negative numbers. That's better than positive. AF learning 1. All this needs to be learned. So just go ahead and currently what I'm gonna go back and do right now is go tighten up the engine bay and put that cover back on, because that's what's gonna be necessary to look at. I'm just gonna go ahead and let this idle for about 10 minutes. You can see the boost, you know, still a little bit low, looks like a little bit of a vacuum leak. But we're just gonna go ahead and let it idle, and then we're gonna go take it for a little test drive.